You're listening to the Nature's Image Farm podcast. I'm your host, Greg Burns, and we're talking bees, homesteading, and the old-time ways. This episode is brought to you by EnduraHive wax-dipped equipment. No paint, no rot, no hassle. EnduraHive. Built to endure. Now, on to the show. Well, good evening, all of our stream team beekeepers. Brian, good to see your lovely shining face on here tonight. For once in history, I was here before you guys. Like, I don't think that's ever happened where I've been on first, but hey, I'll take it when you can get it, I guess, huh?
Do you want to know what I was doing?
Brian, what were you doing?
So it rained here. So I got the lawn done, worked, and then I got the lawn done. And I'm like, well, I can't do anything. So Tara and I were just sitting on the couch and I fell asleep.
You got a little nap in? A little nap-a-roosker? Oh, that's nice, man.
Yeah.
You're gonna be fresh. You're gonna try to like go to sleep tonight after this invigorating stream team talk on swarms and splits, and you're going to be like, I just can't shut my brain off.
It was one of those naps though that did me worse. You know, it did me wrong, I should say. So
you ever have those late day naps where you wake up and then when you wake up, you feel like you woke up in the dream and the dream was actually like real life and you're so like just foggy and froggy and disoriented and you're just like, what is going on here?
I'm in it right now.
This is a dream. Ryan, this is a dream.
I can hear the peacock across the street. It's peacock season again. You know, everything is. I'm living in the clouds.
Wow, this is unbelievable.
No.
Well, Brian, buckle up, buckle yourself in there in case you fall asleep again.
Okay.
We're going to have a talk tonight about swarms and splits, and we're going to answer everyone's questions about swarms and splits. Bruce is tied up, maybe doing one or both of what we're talking about tonight. So he'll jump on when he can tonight. But I'm going to thank everybody again for joining us. We got so many of the regulars here. We've got Grammy's midwife, Keith Spielman, Mr. DC's Bees. Who else is on here? I'm scrolling through here. Mr. Chris Morrow, Drop Time Farms from the Fairfield County Beekeepers. Good to see you guys in here. Spencer Cox, Good Enough Backyard Beekeeping. Hi from Connecticut. We've got Michael from 21st Bee and so many more. Cedar Ridge. We got Phil checking in too. 4C's Bees. Randy Souther, the Tar Heel Beekeeper. Mr. Dennis Sherrill. Trailend Farms, Randy Reed. And the one and only Brian Zavada, or maybe Jen and Brian from Flower Street Farms. Hey, so great to see you guys on here tonight. We're going to be talking swarms. We're going to be talking splits. If you have any questions tonight, please help us out and leave all those comments in all caps so we can trigger those to be viewed, and we'll try our best to get to those questions tonight. We want to thank you again for joining for another stream team beekeeping chat. Super chats are activated. If you find this content helpful, fun, or you want to donate to this cause, feel free to send us a super chat. We will greatly appreciate that. Before we get going, I just want to remind folks, for all of our Learning Yard folks here locally, and also for anybody who may just want to tune in and see what that's all about and kind of learn what beginning beekeeping is like from our perspective, we want to invite you to join as a member here on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel, where we exclusively post the Learning Yard videos. So when we meet here in the shop, we're now recording those sessions, the Q&As and the topic of conversation from right here in the shop. And then we're now recording and filming the content from the actual learning yard and posting those to the members only portion of this YouTube channel, Nature's Image Farm. So we can create more value for our learning yard crowd, but it's a nice, neat little tidy place to plug in the learning yard content for those who maybe can't make it, for those who do make it, but they want to just go over that info again. And just for those folks abroad, all over the world, they want to check in and see what we're doing. You can now check in on those videos by becoming a member of the Nature's Image Farm channel. Speaking of swarm wrangling and split-tasticness, we've got the one and only Mr. Bruce Jenny.
Hello, fellas.
Look at that. Bruce has tricks too. Sounds good, Bruce. How you doing tonight?
Doing good. How about you guys?
Pretty good.
Good.
What were you getting into today?
Oh, I was out. I was actually trying to get I put the slide in my, I'm going to try to do, is that thing still, sounds really loud here. Does it sound okay to you guys?
Sounds fine.
Okay. I was out actually trying to put the slider in my clipboard. I'm going to try and graph some queens tomorrow afternoon. And I was on my way back, and a friend of mine, or a lady that she buys honey from me, she called. I was probably a little over halfway home, and she said, "We've got a swarm on the ground in our yard." And so I'm like, well, that sounds easy. And so I went over there and caught that thing real quick. And it's just, they're going in the nuke box now, probably. They were mostly in. Looked down there, caught the queen in a clip, showed her and her two little daughters the queen, and then they watched as we caught the swarm. So it was kind of fun. But so I got back in time to grab a quick bite, and here I am.
Wow. Nice. Brian, what have you been up to this last week?
Catching swarms on the ground with you.
That's right. That wasn't that long ago, was it?
Yeah. That was good. Now I had a good trip down to your place again. That was a fun day. But up here, I went through all the colonies, and they're all, they're all looking good. So, got a problem though. I got to show the picture.
Oh, Brian, what's wrong, Brian? This is a support group, Brian. It's just us. It's just us three. We're here for you.
I know. Let me see if I can. I'm going to save the image. That way we'll just save it. And let me see. Okay. And then I'm going to open it up. Where's it at? Okay. Let's see if I can.
Should we put like a parental advisory up first in case there are any young ears in the cornfield or?
Yes. All right. So, I was going through and I was checking the packages, and it's almost like I got a bone to pick.
Oh no.
I found that.
That's disgusting.
That's garbage.
Unbelievable.
It's garbage.
I tell you, your first problem is, since I like to, put all my opinions on Facebook and use a lot of words for it, here's your first problem. You don't know what you're doing, Brian. Your first problem is you should have never bought in a package of bees. Second of all, you should have never let that package of bees have a queen that just goes and does whatever she wants to do. And I see probably 12 or 13 little places, where she could have been laying, absolutely, you should, you should be, I don't know where you bought those from, but you got to get your money back.
Yeah. So that's what, that's the problem that I was having. So
what a great problem to have.
You figure that was 2 weeks.
Look at the balloons.
Look at that. I got balloons and stuff now. That was 2 weeks. So I installed them. And then in a 2-week time, I saw that.
Wow.
So, and they're all good. They're close. I probably in another week or so, I'm just going to slap the medium on top of them just so that they have the space. Cause there was one of them that at first when I was checking, I thought, oh no, this thing's going to be a little nectar bound. But they had plenty of room. It's just like they were working one side of the box. It's like everything shifted to one side. And I was like, well, you little jokers there. And I kind of manipulated a couple things and shifted some things, but yeah, everything's good. And you know, it was weird. It was atrocious. The two of my survivor colonies that I have not split just yet. The one I probably will either Friday or Saturday. I'll probably split it just because they were starting with some cups again, and I thought, well, let them go. So I smushed everything down, and I thought I'm just let them all go, and then I'll get it this weekend. But you want to know the colony with your Pepto has not even, and they got those sheets of brood like I showed. They have not even created one cup yet.
Nice. I like hearing that.
I put another box on them because, you know, I want them to have the room, but I literally was, I mean, going through looking pretty good. If I didn't spot the queen, you know, I shook the frames off and was just checking, and I'm like, am I just missing something? Or, you know, but yeah, they have not even created a cup. So if they kind of bypass that whole urge and they just grow, that's fine.
How old is that queen, Brian?
What was that?
It's been 3 years, I think.
No. That's,
was that a solstice from last year?
Yeah, it was
last year.
one of those late ones. So if they're content, I'm just gonna leave them. I'm not gonna mess with them. I'll have a nice, I'll have a monster of a size of a colony is what I'll have.
Yeah.
So
well, that's great. I've heard that a lot this year. Rodney Middleton just says, I caught one of your Pepto queens in a swarm last week, Greg. Rodney, let me know how old that queen is, or if you're just fun and
pink. He sent me. He has a video. It was somebody marked. It's Pepto pink.
Oh, really? Is it one that we sent him? I wonder how old it is.
No, he caught it in a swarm.
Oh, what are the chances that somebody else marks their queens pink? That seems highly unlikely. What area, Rodney? What area are you in, Rodney?
Like he's like around Spartanburg.
Okay, interesting.
So
I do have some customers down there. Pretty interesting, but I think those guys. There's from 2 and 3 years ago. But cool. Well, that's the fun thing we're talking about tonight. Swarms and splits, and queen age does matter. Solstice queens do matter, and that's what an interesting thing to see. Here on our home front, we just we've been trying to be extremely intentional about our requeening and try to make sure that everything gets requeened every single year. And the way that that's typically happens is we fulfill all of our queen. We get our nuke orders out first, and then we fulfill all of our queen orders. And then Greg's left with the scraps at the end of the year. And I'm finally then fulfilling all the needs for our yard and for our growth. And what that ends up being most of the time July and August, by the time I'm getting around and getting everything requeened, or getting to August and doing downsizing splits and things like that. So for us, you know, we have very, very little swarm activity this year. Thank the Lord, it's been beautiful because there's not been a lot to chase or to worry about. Look at that. That's cool. Nice. You can tell by the dark color, you know, it's it's a whole conversation. But the salt and pepper stock there, that definitely goes hand in hand with our queens. But yeah, so we've been we haven't had any swarms. We've had one swarm here this year. And here's the thing, guys. I put this swarm trap up. What most folks don't know is we do custom swarm traps for folks, and we've got one particular one. It's not even on our website, but we've got it where we can brand and engrave and logo it out for you. But I haven't even had to even put swarm traps out because all the swarms that we've caught here, they just find equipment laying around. We had a stack of jester nukes that the entrances were all closed down, but one of the lids was cracked up just a little bit, and we're cleaning up here. And Jake goes to move this skid of jester nukes, and he said, "Dad, there's bees flying in and out of one of these." And I said, "What?" So we went over and looked, and sure enough, there was just a giant swarm moved into a jester box that they didn't have an entrance. It just barely had the lid cracked. Well, as he's moving it, the lid had closed at some point after they moved in. And so I got to open that lid, and there they are. Just, there's this, I mean, this thing is jacked. It is just completely full. So what's interesting about that is a lot of folks, they just over obsess so much about swarms, about how high to put the swarm traps, and specifically the cubic inch and the volume of the swarm trap itself, and what they're using to bait, and what kind of comb, and all these things. And what I see year after year is when I give it no mind, no care, and we've got a couple pieces of equipment just laying out, the bees find them. You're not catching this husky lad. I mean, some folks we've had the opportunity to meet. So it's deceiving on these screens, but I am not what you would call a petite individual. There's no way on God's green earth that I'm climbing a ladder or getting in a boom truck or doing anything silly to hang a swarm trap in a tree. It's not going to happen. If I have to, you're not going to find a swarm trap that I have to get on my tippy toes and do. Matter of fact, you're probably not going to find any at all. I've got 0 hanging swarm traps. Not to say that they're not handy, to say that they're not nice, because they are, especially the way that we build them. I just haven't had a need for that, because if I leave 5 or 6 singles with comb out there and I just scatter them throughout the farm here, hey, the bees find them, and then it becomes, let me look and see, is there a marking on this queen, or is she something that maybe came from somewhere else, or maybe a queen that we didn't get a chance to mark?
I remember last year, it might have been, well, it had to have been a learning yard day where I was down, and it was later after everything was done, and one of your girls, I forget which one, was like, "Dad, there's a swarm over here," and it was right around the building from where Susie's Top Bar is. Remember that one in there? And you had those boxes stacked there, and they literally moved right in.
Yeah. It's just and there does seem to be certain areas that are like magnets for whatever reason for bees and things. Like if you've ever watched animals, I know Bruce, you have, Brian, you watch your quail and things too, but Bruce, historically, as you've watched your family's cattle or anything else, horses, there are certain areas of the land that when it's storming or when it's this or when it's that, they gravitate to. It's their restful spot, their peaceful spot, their shelter spot, or just areas that they traffic in and out. They pick up on whatever that is. And I think bees do the same thing too. And there are certain spots every single year. I think I've caught a swarm out in front of the milk house every single year, I think, that we've been here. And so we'll see what happens this year. Maybe another one will kind of move in. So tonight we're talking about swarms and splits. If you've got questions, put them in all caps and we'll talk about it. Let's maybe start off by we're up in Ohio. I'm in East Central Ohio. Brian's in Northeast Ohio. And Bruce, you're down, I guess, would that be South Central?
Southeast Alabama.
Southeast Alabama.
Right in the corner, yep.
Bruce, has your swarm season tapered off yet? And when did your swarm season start?
I would say it's tapered off, but I caught one today. So I guess we're still having them a little bit, but we usually start getting a few like in February even. And it really kicks off mid to late March, and then all through April, early May, we have swarms. And now it's starting to probably back off a little bit. Yep, I see that. Looks good.
Early May.
Yours,
Brian Lee, Alabama.
Oh yeah, Brian's been catching some. He's just having a blast. He's got spots in both Birmingham and Tallahassee. And he's just been having a blast with these bees. He's catching them in swarm traps. He's catching them in trees. I think he's catching them everywhere. But yeah, so our swarm season is probably starting to wind down a little bit. We're about right here, and where I'm at, we're right in what kind of a little bit of a dearth between flows. But the tallow trees are, I mean, any day now they're going to start hopefully packing it in. And so it seems to me like when there's a really nice, when the main flow hits, they don't tend to swarm near as much, at least not in my experience. Maybe if they get honeybound or overcrowded, they might, but they aren't looking to multiply anymore. They're just looking to pack food away, it seems like, at that point in time. So I think we're probably getting near the end of it. But Greg, as you say, there are all kinds of absolutes in beekeeping, right? You know what they're going to cut off on May 15th. Tomorrow is the last day in Alabama every year. They don't swarm after that. Just kidding. I mean,
I'm thinking, what?
You just
what
never,
are we talking
you just,
about here?
you just never know. I mean, there's going to be some swarms, and I imagine sometimes if they're in a smaller crevice or a tree or a small beehive from a beekeeper they're crammed in too tight, I think they can swarm later. But they've started to slow down here, I believe. We're not hearing about near as many swarms as we were just even a few weeks ago.
Yeah, Brian, when did your swarms in your neck of the woods start?
It's been about the last week or so. Like we had a peppering just here and there. It was probably, I kind of, I've had a guy up in this area that he has a business, the Bee Man, and he's been just pinging me that way. He said, he was going to help me just boost my numbers. So we've been texting and stuff, and it was kind of scattered, but now over the last week, it's just been, it's practically every day I'm seeing stuff where people spot a swarm. But the first ones I always say, like I told that guy, I said, those are the ones that the people probably hadn't touched the colonies, and they probably didn't have room because it was too early, so probably the colonies that were not managed, they ran out of space and they swarmed out early. But the colonies that are being managed, I'm seeing about right in now is like the hot and heavy time. So, and that's typical. I mean, we're usually second week or so of May is usually what I say. So if we have anything in April, like last year, we started April 9th was the first swarm that I saw last year. That was way early. Like I said, that was like a month early. Because we're usually May. So, and it usually stretches pretty much throughout the month. We'll have stuff going up to June, So I haven't quite figured out the exact date. Like Bruce has things figured out. May 15th, it stops. I'm not that advanced in my beekeeping just yet.
Around here is kind of like when the pecan trees start to leaf out and the kudzu starts to leaf out, the freeze is over. You just take it to the bank. May 15th, we're done. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. We do not. And obviously every year can be a little bit different too. If you have an unusually warm winter and things start to come in the hives a little sooner and they build up quicker, they may start a little bit earlier. I think I've even heard of a few swarm, very few, like even in January, but mostly there's a very few in February. And then, historically, when I first started keeping bees, I would usually see a few swarms like 8th of March or whatever, early in March, but it really, really went crazy in, late March, like March 20th and beyond. For, like I said, a couple of months, it would be pretty busy, and then it does tend to back off. But there is no absolute data. It would be kind of nice if there was, but then again, they keep us guessing. And I caught a nice little swarm this evening before I got on here. That's why I was a little late. And just a swarm probably 18 inches in diameter, just laying there on the ground. The queen right in the middle of the swarm, just caught her. They started running the box and just easy. So just set the box beside them, set the queen in there, and they just ran in. Now that they were still on the edge of they were still going in when I left. But so you just never know. And why? And the lady there asked me, she said, "Why do swarms go on the ground?" I said, "I don't know, but that one was just laying right there in the middle of the ground. I don't know if that queen just landed there and they all fell, came down around her, or they fell off a branch in a tree above there, or what happened." But there was just a nice, or almost a perfect circle of bees just sitting there on the ground. It's pretty wild.
That's a great observation. I've seen it a couple times. I've got a little video. Hopefully I can get it out. we got a message from Steve and Jane here locally that they had a swarm on the ground and it wouldn't go into the box. And so Jeff and me and Brian and my daughter Lily, we jumped into the side by side and we ran down there just to see if we could help them out. And boy, that was a you gotta watch that video. Every year, I think there's a new big red in town.
Oh my!
So you'll get to see what happens when you pull out, when you grab a pink marker that you haven't used all year long, and then go to use it for the first time. What happens? And that was just a backup pink marker. I spotted it here on the desk when we were heading out there. But hey, the reason I say all that is I've seen this a couple times. Not this year. I think it was it last year or the year prior during was it nuke pickups or package pickups? One of my colonies swarmed and it was up in the air, and I ran out with a pot and pan, literally, and and I was banging on it. Tanging is what it's called. And when I did that with a rhythmic tang, those bees all of a sudden they just dropped right out of the sky and they went right to the ground. Brian's got, what are you showing us there, Brian? You've got a swarm on.
Jason sent that. The last one was one that Anil sent. Everybody sent me. I had 3 people send me pictures of swarms today.
It's that time. So we went over there to check out that swarm. And what'd you do to Bruce, man?
I didn't do anything. I showed him a picture.
Did you just put Bruce in timeout?
I don't know what he did.
That's unbelievable. I wonder why you would do that, Brian.
He got all them fancy voices and stuff now, and now his computer, he's got it hooked up on like a Commodore 64.
Ah. Is that a R&B soul band? And he's back.
Look at that.
And muted.
Guys, I was trying to share a screen, but I can't figure out how to do it without a screen. So, Brian, I'm sending it to you.
So,
Messenger.
The button down in the bottom, Bruce, that says leave studio, that will close things out.
I didn't hit that button. I was trying to do something else and it disappeared. I was in a different box. But anyway, I digress.
All right.
So, Brian, you should have that. You can see the little swarm we just caught. It's kind of a good little
the tanging thing. I don't understand necessarily why it works. If it disrupts it's something, but they hit the ground and boom.
I don't know. Well, can you see? I don't know if you can see the bees in front of it. That was not the one I meant to send. Never mind. Hold on.
That's what you just sent me.
I know, but it's not the one I meant to send.
He just sent.
I guess I can do what you just did, right? I can do what you just did. I can hold it up to the screen.
Yeah, Control Alt Delete.
Try that, Bruce. Bruce is on a Mac. That won't work, Jack.
Yeah. It's probably Command Shift something.
I'll go ahead and keep talking.
You sure you got any more photos you want to throw up there, Brian?
I do, but it's going to take me. Yeah, go ahead, Brian. You do your thing.
Brian Lee says, I went old with the Commodore 64 one. Brian Lee, my very first computer was a Tandy 1000 that had DOS, had no operating system. We had to learn MS-DOS. So even before the 64, that's where I started, buddy. So, yeah.
Hey, Brian, you're old. It's back in the floppy disk days, huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's how we started. What, the 5 1/4s, and then they had the little 3 1/2s. Okay, here we go. We're gonna make
so you can see how big a nuke box is. That's how big it was. Right there, just laying on the ground.
Wow, that's a nice size.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll be interesting to see how many frames it covers. It's not a huge swarm by any stretch, but we'll give them a chance. If they do well, fine. If not, then that's fine too. But we caught
Why do you think they hit the ground like that?
I don't know. The tree was pretty tall. Like there weren't any branches right above the ground either. It was like I think it was like an oak tree, but it was like they had trimmed the lower branches. So there probably wasn't any significant branches lower than like 15 feet up. And so I don't know if there was a big hollow of the tree. I don't know. And there were really not a lot of trees around that spot. It was like out in the middle of their yard. And so I don't know why they were laying right there, but they sure as heck were. And we got them. I think we got them. We got the queen in a little clip in there, and the bees were going in when I left, and so hopefully we got them. I don't think there's any way we didn't, but yeah, it was not that impressive of a swarm for sure. Whose swarm was that?
David Kress.
Yeah, it's fun. It's so much fun. I don't really try to actively catch many swarms because I figure I can make splits, and when I'm trying to, when you're trying to make splits, is, if you want to control your genetics at all, if you catch just wild feral swarms, you don't know what you're getting, but it is kind of fun to catch a few and to just see how they do.
You just touched on something there that I don't think a lot of folks are either A, comfortable with, comfortable talking about, or B, they've never thought about. But just because you see bees on the ground or bees on a post or bees on a tree, a couple things. Number one, does not mean that those are quality bees. Number two, does not mean that they are feral living in a tree for eons bees. And number three, doesn't mean that they're going to actually stick and stay where you're at. And I think a lot of folks automatically assume that there's a swarm, it doesn't cost me anything, and then I'm going to put a lot of time and energy and resources to it. And if you do that, I'm not saying that's not a good strategy if you have a plan for that. But how many times have you caught in a swarm and then a little bit later realize, what in the world did I do here? Sometimes you do catch your own bees, and I think that's important. That's pretty handy to catch your own. I'm interested in two things. I'm interested in, here in my neck of the woods, potentially catching my own bees, but I very rarely see them dumping out of my own colonies. I think that they do end up in the trees here somewhere, and they overwinter, and then they swarm out, and we end up catching a purple dot or something in my color scheme that I know, where it's multicolored. And I have caught those that I know, okay, that goes back 2 years ago, or that's a 3-year-old queen. I think that is cool. And catching swarms for me is more interesting and fun, just to see what is the pedigree. Is this one of my marked queens? Is this a standardized marked queen from somewhere else? Is it not marked at all? And just because it's not marked does not mean it's feral or a wild queen or a swarm. That could simply just be one of your queens got superseded late in the year last year. They overwintered, they came out of it, and for whatever reason, they want to hit the bricks, and she has no mark. Maybe one of your colonies requeened at any point last year and is now swarming and has no mark. Or maybe you don't mark your queens at all, and you never really know who they are. I feel like this has turned into like one of those Maury Povich things. Maury, you're looking here and say, Pepto Pink, you are not the mother. For me, it's pretty fun. That's the first thing that I think is, if I catch a swarm, I want to know is, who's your mama? That's what I want to know is who is the mama of this thing? And then kind of go from there. And there are certain things that you look at, but depending on where you're at, sometimes Bruce could speak to this. Sometimes you get what you pay for, and sometimes that price of free bees, just your time and equipment, can potentially set you up for some difficulty or challenges for a very long time, trying to get characteristics or attributes out of your genetic program. If you've got a genetic program, this is something to consider, is what are you bringing in? Just because they're free and they flew in, you're bringing those in, they could already be in your mating area to start with, but not necessarily. They could have come from just outside and just came into. Bruce, what's been your experience with both the pros and cons of catching swarms down in Southeast Alabama?
Well, I basically built my foundation on, initially local bees that I got from my mentor, and they were pretty good bees. He made a lot of his own queens. There are a lot of feral bees, I think, in his area. He also would bring queens in from the outside on occasion to kind of mix up the genetics a little bit, but they were good bees. But then I also went on the swarm catching, catching my own bees and other people's bees. If anyone would call me about a swarm, up to, I think I drove 30 or 40 miles one time and caught a swarm when I was new at it at night. That was fun. But I just was catching any and every swarm I could catch. I would leave work at lunchtime and go catch a swarm if it was close to work, and just catching everything I could. And I had some really strong bees. I mean, I really had some nice bees. A lot of those even smaller swarms, if I caught them in the early, like February or early March, they would explode and make me honey. And so a lot of them just didn't do anything. And so when you're dealing with swarms, you don't know what you're going to get. But probably the biggest down side to it was the attitude of my bees overall was pretty spicy. And it's still, there's a few that are that way, but it's getting better. And I think that the local feral bees in this area, a lot of them are a little bit on the spicy side. And so they're productive, and I think they're fairly mite resistant. I mean, they have some mites, but they seem to be good and strong and kind of plow through the mite situation pretty well. But they are just a little bit spicy, and some of them are a lot spicy. And so, as anybody's followed the channel knows, I've been trying to fix that a little bit. So what I'm doing this year, first year I've really done this, is I'm moving all my swarms that I catch. I'm finding the queens, marking them purple, and I'm moving them to the Midland City Bee Yard, and I'm just watching them. And I haven't caught very many. I think I've caught 5 or 6, and I think maybe this may have been 7 today. That either they move into just a random box on my back porch here on my driveway, or there's a couple of I caught a couple of them outside a doctor's office, here in town, or this one I caught today. One of them I caught was right there in my bee yard, but at the one in Midland City, and so just kind of random swarms, just kind of watching them. Got one out of a meter box about a mile from my house here, just a brand new swarm that had moved in, and so. Just kind of marking the queens purple, watching them, and if I sense that they're either weak genetically as far as spotty breed pattern, poor bees, period, disease load, I'll replace the queen, or if they start to get real spicy, I'll replace the queen. And so that's kind of my swarm catching bee yard. There are some other standard hives there as well, but that has kind of become my experimental yard, so to speak, over there. And I don't really plan on putting. That's kind of just what I decided to do this year. It's the closest one to my house, and I can just get there pretty quickly and easily. And there are some pallet slots there available, so I'm just dropping the swarms there. And I've done a couple of videos on some of these swarms in the last few weeks, and most of them are doing well. One of them's not very strong at all, not doing that great, but most of them are doing pretty good. Those 2 that moved into the barn up there, I put them out there, and those were probably, if not my bees, they were probably descendants of some of my bees because they were pretty close to some of my hives. But so that's my goal, and I'm still trying to work on the genetics on everything. But what if I happen upon a gem? If I have a jewel of a hive where I have a really nice queen that's got good genetics and is really productive, so there's nothing wrong with it. I just think that if you build your entire operation up on just catching wild swarms, ultimately down the road you can work on your genetics and probably get them where you want them. But you're going to end up with any and everything, and you just never know what you're getting when you get those feral bees. Another thing that I've noticed about swarms, and this is something that's been pretty common, is they may build up real strong pretty quickly, but if it's an older queen, many times they'll replace that queen within a pretty short period of time. They just supersede her. Like, you may mark the queen when you get her. Like, say, I'll mark them purple. I haven't noticed any of these queens doing this yet, but if you mark her purple or whatever color you want to mark her, you come back in maybe a month and the queen is new. She doesn't have a mark on her anymore. They probably just superseded that queen. That's just the bees' way, I think, in nature of splitting themselves, getting established, and then getting a nice young queen, having a nice young queen in both colonies. Because obviously, they leave queen cells behind in the donor colony, and then that new queen goes out, that older queen goes out, and she gets them started, and she does a great job. And if she's a really old queen, ultimately the bees they know they have to supersede her, and so I think that happens quite often as well. I think she really goes to work and does a great job. But many times I think when they swarm, the prime swarms, I think those queens are about ready to be replaced. At least that's been my experience. A lot of these hives requeen themselves, and sometimes they might look a little spotty brood pattern, a little weak before she requeens, and you come back with that new queen that's in there, and they might just be blowing it out. So it's just with swarms, you just don't know what you're getting. You don't know what they're going to do, but it's a lot of fun. And if you kind of pay attention and keep track of them, you can have a really good situation, I think. But when you just drop them in everywhere and you don't really pay attention to where they came from or really watch them until they get great big huge. If you really aren't watching them, if you don't know which ones even are the swarms, then it can become an issue if you're really concerned about trying to get any type of traits or genetics in your bees. So that's kind of my experience.
Brian, when you catch swarms, do you go out of your way to catch them, or do you just invite them to take residence in equipment that's laying out?
Yeah, I don't go out of my way. I just I've learned my lesson. I'm kind of like you, you know. And I think I saw Tom Sosman. He said the same thing. He would rather just work in his yard and work on his own rather than to sit there and chase. You know, like yeah, granted, okay, they would be. You know, people say, oh, they're freebies. Now I don't set out swarm traps, so like whenever I've caught the swarms that I've caught, you know, like I've gotten a couple at the farmer guy's place. They've been in a tree, so I've had to get on a ladder. I've had to do stuff like that, so I've had to collect them, and it takes time. And the amount of time that you have to put into it anymore, I'm just like, nope. You know, probably the two easiest that I've ever caught that literally I drove to get were ones at my mom's place. They were my bees, and there was one that literally it was on a log that was a decent sized log, and she's got a wood pile at the one end of her yard, and they were hanging on the log. It was drizzling, so they were not moving. She called me up and said she had taken the dog out, and she said there's a swarm over on the wood pile. I said I'll be over in a half an hour, and I literally, because I mean they were all huddled up. I took a box over there, set it down, put the bottom board, set a box on there, had some frames. I literally picked the log up real easy and just went boom and put the lid on it, and that was that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm to the point now to where I don't go out of my way to, you know, like if it's real convenient, if it's a friend of mine or if it's close or it's real convenient, like I'm not going to go out and try to climb on a tree, or I may take my bucket with the
Yeah.
pole, and if they're within reach, you know, if they're 15, 20 feet, I can get them that way, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time and effort into it. And there are a
Yeah.
lot of local beekeepers who are just getting started that want those swarms. And so, you know,
Yep.
I'm okay not getting them, but if I walk up to a bee yard and I've got a swarm hanging 4 feet off the ground, I'm just going to
Well,
drop
I
them in a
would
nuke
take it.
box and set them down. And so that's my point. I'm not spending a lot of time going trying and catching them, but if it's
Yeah.
easy, especially like the one swarm that was hanging outside the doctor's office, I mean, it was a hospital clinic, so I was kind of on the clock. So I went over there and just caught them, you know, on the clock and just took them to my spot
Yeah.
there. So I actually put them in boxes, let them sit there, drove back to work, did what I had to do back at the hospital. And then on the evening after I got off work, I drove them out to the bee yard. And so it's
Mhm.
just so easy to make splits and to control your own genetics and to do, you know, it's so easy
Yeah.
to do that. Mike, Mike made a point in there about hitting them with oxalic acid vapor after you catch them, and that is a great idea. Let them get anchored for 3 or 4 days, and then hit them with that before they have a chance to establish some capped brood. And that is a
Mhm.
great idea. I actually hit the swarms that I had. I waited too long, probably, but I did hit them a few days ago with OAV just to knock out. I didn't really notice any mite problems, or I haven't tested them, but I'm like, I'll just go ahead and hit these bees. And so it's fun. Swarms are fun. I used to set up swarm traps. I'd always have a few going, and you know, the way I would do it is I would just take basically an 8-frame box is a perfect size, 8-frame brood box. I know people build them to where they got a double deep with room in the bottom, and they figure out all the dimensions that they need to be. And those swarm traps are really effective. But I would just take an 8-frame medium. I'd just screw a bottom on it with no entrance on the bottom, and I'd have a lid that I kind of screw down or strap on there. I cut me a 1.5-inch hole, or if you could even do smaller in the front, just like a hole saw. Hang them on, you know, put a board on the back with a hole in it so I could hang it on a nail. And I would only put them where I could reach up and just hang them on there real easy. And I caught just numerous swarms with that size box. I think an 8 to 10 frame box is a really good size. And I would put, you know, sometimes I'd fill them up with frames, have 1 frame of brood comb in there with some swarm commander. Sometimes I just have a couple frames in there and the back would be empty. But if you do that, they'll dang sure they'll build out a hive in there, and you'll have to cut all that stuff out. So I figure I've had plenty of swarms going hives that have frames in them. I know that people say you need to have empty space, and maybe that's better, but I've caught a ton of swarms with just 1 or 2 brood frames, and the rest of the box fill up with frames, and they just start at the front and build back, or start, you know, and it works great. So I
Funny
think
thing
it's
about that,
super.
Bruce,
And
is people say a lot of things, don't they? People say a lot of things like it has to be this high and
Yeah.
this size, because I read a research paper once from some guy who I'm sure absolutely had no bias at all, right? And so they
Yeah.
hedge all their bets on that. And people say a lot of things like packages or junks. You should only be using these special VSH queens or this, that, the other thing. But the fact of the matter is the bees are going to do what they're going to do. You've got to decide and choose where do swarms fit into your management. And if you decide you want the thrill, the chase, and you want to experience that, then I think that that's okay. That's cool. But there are some things I think that you should consider doing, at least have in the back of your mind before you just go gung ho and bring in and leave these it's one thing if things are swarming in your own yard. We get that, right? But if you are going out of your way to vac off swarms and bring them back and hive them, or if you are, you know, pulling swarms from Timbuktu or from around town and all those kind of things, I think one of the worst things that you can possibly do is bring them into your home yard with they've not been vetted at all, and you bring that into your yard. I think that that is a tremendous risk, and there's a couple of things I think we can talk about on what we can do to mitigate the risk and make sure that these are quality bees that you're bringing in before you get them too close to where you are bringing your queens through those cycles, where you're making your splits. Those are important things to consider. Before we get into that, I want to thank Mr. Jeff Burke for becoming a YouTube member, like we mentioned earlier. If you are part of our Learning Yard crowd here at Nature's Image Farm and you attend the Learning Yards, if you want to catch these videos and watch them over and over and over again, if you can't make it to a Learning Yard, or if you are just in the Nature's Image Farm family abroad and you want to check out what's going on at the Learning Yard, we're excited to announce that you can now check out all those videos, the shop talks here from the shop, and then also the Learning Yard videos from the field. Those are being posted regularly from this year. So if you would like to check those out, those are going to a special place on our YouTube channel under our membership. I think it's $5-6 a month, something like that. And you can check out all these Learning Yard videos, raw, uncut, goofy, a lot of puns, a lot of dad jokes, a lot of beekeepers having fun, donuts, coffee, you name it. But Jeff Burke, I want to thank you for becoming a YouTube member. And I hope that you enjoy those members only YouTube videos. Mr. Castle Hives, Brian Coper himself, hashtag Bruce is late, hashtag it pays to be on time. Look at this, Bruce. He's just.
Well, how much does it pay?
How much does it pay?
I didn't know it paid anything. I'll have to be on time next time.
Early bird gets the worm.
I don't want a worm. I want to get paid.
Big brother's watching. Big brother's watching. So Brian and Jeff, hey, thanks for that, guys. Let's talk about this because there've been a lot of great comments in here. Let's talk. Let's finish up about swarms. Well, what we can do to make sure that they're quality, that they're healthy, that they don't impose any potential risk, and then let's talk about what are some things that we can do to prevent the swarming to begin with. So, Bruce, when you catch your swarm, do you bring them back to one of your most prized out yards, or do you take them somewhere else?
Well, I just started. I have one that had a lot of it is one of my out yards, but it had quite a few empty slots. And so I just started. I just kind of determined that would be my swarm spot this year. I've never really done that before and just identified one place for them because I would just take them whatever was close to where the swarm was. But this year I decided kind of randomly that, hey, that spot has the most empty spaces. And there are some established colonies there, but they're not it's not my best bee yard by any stretch. So I thought, well, that'll be a good place to take them. It's away from everything else. And we'll just watch them and see how they do. And, if, here, maybe midsummer, I'm going to try to graft a few queens tomorrow and see how they do. And then, maybe midsummer, if some of those queens get mature, or if I order some more from Zach or whoever, if some of these queens aren't doing very well, I won't hesitate to replace them with some that I know where they came from. I know that they're stock that I'm happy with. And, but if they turn into if they have a pretty good attitude, and if they look like they're going to grow up and be productive, they may just stick around. Who knows what they may end up turning into in the future. So, but yes, I've never really focused on that before, but this year I've done a better job of that. And so that's become my mantra. I felt like for a while I probably should have a dedicated area for my swarms, and now I guess this would classify as that.
Yeah.
It's for some reason this bee yard did not overwinter super well. And some of the hives had some attitudes out there. So when I did my dealing with mean bees video, I really humbled some of those hives down. They're having a hard time kind of catching back up, and it just hasn't been the best spot as far as productivity this year. So I'll get a few supers of honey there, but I won't get near as much as I was planning. So what better spot if I got empty slots on my pallets, if I need a place to put some swarms, why not just put them right there? So that's what I did.
That makes sense. I know, Brian, you don't go out of your way to even catch any swarms, so that's not really a problem you've got to worry about. If you've got something that's flying in your home yard area and you catch it, then chances are it has something to do with your local genetics. Maybe there is some another beekeeper within 2-3 miles of you, maybe. But here's something that I would like folks to consider with swarms is if you love the thrill of the chase, if you feel like that creates value for you because you don't have to buy bees, then that's great. But what I would highly encourage you to do is consider the brood cycle of these rascals and take advantage of a couple things. Number one, I would recommend that you move these swarms to an out yard or a holding yard, a quarantine yard even. And as we were talking about that, there are some great comments coming in here. But Bohemia Bee says, I do quarantine yards for caught swarms. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. Just because the bees are healthy enough to swarm, that doesn't mean that they are healthy enough to actually be productive. One of the things that I have done, and we don't go out of our way to catch swarms. But in the past, when we have traveled on calls to go after swarms, one of the most disturbing and alarming things that I never thought that I would see with swarms is mite infestations like I had seen. I have done mite washes on swarms, and it absolutely blows your mind how in the world that many mites are traveling on the bees while they're airborne and doing their thing. For me, that's a major problem. So I don't want to bring mites into my yard from somebody else's catastrophe, especially those late season swarms. Late season swarms can sometimes be, for different reasons, can be absconds because those pest loads get so high, those bees hit the bricks. That can happen in the spring too, but typically you'll see that a little bit later on in the year. For that reason specifically, swarms have, for my opinion, have got to go into a quarantine yard or a holding yard until we can do a wash, so we can see what they're going on. If they've got a nice temperament, if the brood looks healthy, if they have a lot but they have a lot of mites, we can treat them and knock that back before that material gets used anywhere. One thing swarms do really, really well is they draw out comb phenomenally. So swarms can be used to help draw out some comb and do some things like that. But it's really important to know what it is that you're working with and have some time to figure that out before you bring those too close to anywhere where you may be making queens from known genetics. Mike Art here, Easy Ox Mike Art, has a great comment here. And don't forget to treat those swarms and not drag a mite bomb into your yard. Treating with oxalic acid, not too soon. I don't like to do it like right away because swarms are fickle. And sometimes those swarms do not want to just lock into that box and they want to get going. But when that colony sticks and they start bringing pollen in, and before she's got cat brood, I love to go in there with oxalic acid and just nuke any and all mites that might be in there. So that's where oxalic acid is your friend. That's where oxalic acid is also your friend on package bees. By and large, that's not a problem with package bees, but to be safe, right before you've got cat brood is a beautiful time, a perfect time to use oxalic acid. And that's just something that we show and demonstrate our folks here too with those cordless INSTANTVAP units and the Easy oxalic acid. I mean, you've got no reason not to. You can get to anywhere, anytime, and do it. And I think that's a huge return on that investment. So put them in a quarantine yard. Make sure they're not spicy. Run you out of town. Staple your socks to your ankles. Make sure they're not sick, disturbing bees, right? And sometimes you want to let them have a little bit of a brood cycle just to make sure everything is not funky going on there. So those are some things to consider if you are going to bring those into your yard. But I'd like to spend more time intentionally splitting my own colonies more so than letting my colonies split themselves and me have to drag them out of a tree to save it, that is money that you're literally just burning. I mean, you are watching an asset dwindle and disappear. So for me, I like to make sure that we're doing what we can to prevent swarming. So I'm all about leaving some equipment out. And if swarms move in or some of ours move in, then great. But I'm trying to get ahead of that and make sure that our colonies are not swarming. And Bruce and Brian, we've already talked about that a little bit. Those later in the season queens, in my opinion, are beautiful for that. They can get a little bit more challenging to make those splits, but it's such a beautiful time to kind of go in there and do that. One of the things to consider if you are catching those swarms, here's a question here, guys. Do you ever close off the entrance of the hive of swarm, or do you close off the entrance of the swarm for 24 hours with the hope that this will increase the chances for the bees to stick? Bruce, do you close them down for 24 hours once they're in?
No. I've never done that. If I happen to get the queen in a clip, sometimes like I left the one out there tonight in a clip and the bees are moving in. If I happen to see her real easily, I do that. If I don't worry too much about it. To me, swarms are it's kind of a risky thing anyway. And if they stick, they stick. If they don't, they don't. If I go out there, and rarely do they leave, very rarely, occasionally they will, but it's very rare. Normally they stay in there, especially if I have a frame of drawn comb in there, which I'm pretty much out of that now. So I've got just on empty foundation. But so no, I typically will just, hopefully I catch them. Sometimes it takes a couple times to get them all in the box. Even if I don't see the queen, that's what I do. If I happen to get her in a clip, I'll leave her in there in a little cage for a day or two, maybe a couple days. But one thing I have found to keep them in, if you have a frame of brood from another colony, if you drop that thing in there, that I don't think I've ever had one leave when I did that. They just jump on that thing and they're in. Like, I don't think you have to worry about it. At least that's been my experience. Like we said, there's no absolutes, but anytime I've ever done that, the swarm has stayed regardless of strength. It doesn't have to be a great, big, huge, nice frame of brood, just enough to kind of, give the bees something to kind of lock them in there, and they will hang out. They typically will not leave if you do that, in my experience. But I don't worry if they leave. It was just that I don't worry too much about it. I wasn't supposed to have them anyway.
It was.
I feel like there's a risk if you lock them in, especially if it's hot. That's risky to me because you got to make sure you have ventilation. And I just like to let them do their thing. And if they decide they don't want to stay in there, then I don't. It doesn't bother me if they leave. I don't put a lot of value in swarms necessarily. I don't feel like it's a huge deal if I catch them or if I don't. Like, if I don't catch them, I don't care. If they're too far away, if it's too much effort to go get them, I'll let somebody else have them. I just tell people, put it on Facebook and someone will come get it, and they always do. So unless it's super easy and convenient for me, I usually don't even catch them. I don't do anything like that. But so those are my thoughts. Just a couple of pro tips on that, just some tips. If you just, like I say, put a frame of brood in there, most likely they'll stay.
Yeah, I've done both to try to get them to stick. I think brood or food is your friend. Whenever I have caught them, I'll put at least a half of a pollen patty on and a bucket feeder. And I do choose to close them down if I can for 24 hours, especially if I were moving them to a new spot and bringing them in. I'd like to just keep them closed, put food on there. And I think you probably have at least an 80-90% stick when I do that. But if it get too disturbing, that can go the other way too. I can remember, was it last year before last, when Miss Lisa, Grammy's midwife, when she was up, I had caught a swarm the day before and closed them up into a gesture box. That was one of the 10 pounds of bees in a 5-pound box kind of a thing. And as soon as I opened it up to show her, I think that we get that on video, they all hit the sky. Like, they were not sticking, but they had no brood. They had no food. They were closed up in a gesture box for 24 hours. That is not ideal. And they hit the sky. And I've seen that a lot of times is bees. I'd sometimes swarm into equipment. They swarm into a rendezvous point, I think, temporarily until they finally get to their final destination. And so that could be that's a horse of a different color. Mr. David Little's got a great comment here. A swarm can carry foul brood. Putting them on a quarantine yard to let them prove themselves before bringing them into the general population, I think that just makes a lot of sense. So you just never, I feel like the Forrest Gump thing, you just never know what you're going to get. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I will say though, I mean, like I said, I built my first my foundation of bees probably for the first 8 years or more, maybe even close to 8 to 10 years it was built on bringing some queens in from outside, but a lot of those my genetics, I had a lot of strong bees. Now I had some spicy ones, but I made a lot of honey, had a lot of success as a beekeeper keeping bees. Even if some of the traits were not desirable, but I had some of the biggest, strongest colonies of my beekeeping career built on a foundation of catching swarms. And so I don't personally think it's bad to do that. But the risk, once again, is you don't know what you're getting. And most swarms are calm and gentle when you catch them, even if they come from a more spicy stock. You know, they might be gentle for until it gets up into
Let them grow.
a deep or a deep and a medium. And then all of a sudden, you know, that dearth hits. They're all happy through honey flow, and that dearth hits, and all of a sudden you've got, you know, little devils out there stapling your ankles because they get big and mature, and they can get kind of mean and spicy then. So that's what you run the risk of, is just not knowing what you got. And so but I built you know, I just kind of did a little bit of everything for a long time and built my foundation really on local bees caught in swarm traps, caught in swarms hanging on limbs, and we're bringing a few queens in from the outside that were gentle. I had some gentle ones I brought in from the outside, and I had some gentle ones I caught locally, but I also had a lot of them that you just don't know what you're going to get. That's the bottom line. You don't know what you're going to get unless you know they're your bees, your genetic line. And so that's the risk. And plus the diseases, the mite resist, you just don't know what you got. So, but we beat it, you know, don't need to beat a dead horse. It's just kind of, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong with what I did. I've built a pretty good operation with that as my foundation, but now I'm trying to kind of move in a different direction as far as attitude goes. And I don't think I've risked any production, at least not to this point, by doing that. And we'll see where it goes.
Well, I think a lot of folks are excited about swarms. I think more folks who are new to beekeeping are more excited about it, and I think it's awesome. One of my favorite moments with beekeeping is when that swarm that moved into Susie's top bar hive, because Lily said, "Dad, I think there's a swarm," and I go over there and look, and there she is. Just, you know, she's just got her like her hands up, just like trying to be in the middle of all that. And I walk down in there, and just to be in the middle of that energy and that electric and the smell and just the sound, I mean, it is miraculous. It's beautiful. And here's what I like about, here's one of the things about swarms. Is one, I've got a talk on swarm prevention, and one of my favorite things about the swarms, and we've got to talk about this for a second, is if we think about what a swarm really is. I know we've talked about this before, but for those who haven't heard us go down this road, just for a second, you know, right now, when I say a swarm of bees, you know, a lot of folks are thinking, oh, it's that photos like Brian was showing or Bruce was showing, right? And it's the actual swarm, right? When you say swarm of bees to a non-beekeeper, it's bees swirling your face, attacking you like some kind of horror film. But think about the beauty, the true beauty of this. Imagine your family and all of your work here on earth. You cannot max out your assets any further. Your land, your savings, your investments, everything is completely maxed out. There is no more that you can do with what you're working with. So what you do is you and half the crew say, we're going to pass all of this wealth and abundance down to the next generation. And us with the wisdom and the know-how, we're going to go leave and we're going to go seed another colony. We're going to go start from scratch with nothing but maybe hope and wisdom. We're going to go do this all over again, but we're leaving all of this behind for you. Like, how beautiful is that? To me, it reminds me of the scripture that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. That's what a swarm is. That mama, she is leaving, and she's leaving that colony in hopes and in that preparation that her daughter, a virgin, is going to step in that role to be laying all the brood and that next generation to be able to partake and have all of the abundance and all the fruits of all of the labor of those 2 generations ahead. What a beautiful thing to think about. Like, I absolutely love that. So when you hear us talking about swarms in the negative connotation, swarms are one of the most miraculous, beautiful things, evidence of God's beautiful, miraculous, perfect creation. But we've got to be smart about that when we're bringing those into our yard and what that could mean for that. So I love swarms. I love what they signify. I love being involved in it. I love catching them. But history has just showed me trying to go after those and capture those. I usually end up spending so much time or effort to get them to stick, to chase them, to get them into a box, all the different things that for me, to be a better steward of the land or to be a better steward of the talent. Remember, we talked about the talent, the 5 talent, the 2 talent, the 1 talent, right? For me, I would rather be working in my colonies and move those forward to prevent swarming and make that growth with their and what I'm looking for. I'd like to talk tonight, guys, and spend some time talking about what can we actually do. Can we actually stop a swarm in its tracks? Can we prevent swarms? And what are some steps and some things that we can do to make sure that we keep our bees in our boxes and moving forward? And we'll get right to that right after this. So we spend all this time and money and effort and energy into putting our bees in the box for a lot of different reasons. But by and large, most folks don't want to see that investment squandered or disappeared or gone. It's fair to say that most beekeepers want to see that investment and that asset to continue to grow and to produce. That's a pretty fair statement, isn't it, guys?
Mm-hmm.
It is some folks' management to just let them swarm and do their own thing. And I get that. But fellas, let's talk tonight a little bit about what are some things that we can do to actually keep these bees in the boxes and prevent them from swarming to begin with. Brian, let's start with you. What are some things that you do to prevent your bees from swarming?
Yeah. So up to this point, what I typically have done, and it's worked out for me. I mean, I'd say I'm probably, oh gosh, 90 or so percent effective, probably more than that, 95% effective in keeping them. I will always watch them, and it starts early. So you have to go in and inspect your colonies because you have to know the signs. It's not like, it just happens one day and they just say, oh, guess what? We're going to swarm. There is a buildup process, and you're going to notice the drone brood, and you're going to notice the brood buildup, and you're going to notice all those signs. And then you're going to notice the little practice cups, and then you're going to see the cells. So it's a process. And if you time it out right, usually what I'll do is I'll try and time it. Like I've got one right now that I know probably Friday or Saturday when I go over there, they're going to have cells. Now, they won't be capped. So I usually time it out so that the cells are charged and they're building them out and then I will locate Queen Mama, and I basically do an artificial swarm. I will move her to a new location, couple frames of brood, give her some food, you know, and then I'll usually feed them as well, just because they're going to lack that foraging force, so they're not going to be able to bring in anything for a little while. And then up to this point, I would usually let the Royal Rumble take place. Whatever cells were in there, they were in there. But now, you know, after listening to you guys and kind of giving it some thought, I'm crushing down a certain number of cells, so that way I just leave a couple, and that main parent colony, well, they make a queen and they move on. So I've got one now that, let's see here, the virgins probably between yesterday or today probably emerged. So if I were to go over there tomorrow, I guarantee I would find signs that those cells that I left are probably emerged out. So, and it's early enough in the season. I think that colony will be fine. Space wise, also, you know, that's also key. Set aside from doing all this, you got to manage your space. Just, you know, like I found it's so key going to shifting from double deeps down to a single brood chamber. Space is just so key. I mean, this early to have 2 and 3 supers on a couple colonies, I would have never had that before. And if you talk to people up here and say you have 2 or 3 supers on, they kind of give you a funny look, like, man, you got to be in some kind of like an anomaly for an area. But it's just managing the space. I'm just giving them extra space. So that is all. But space is key, and then it's just timing. And you learn that after, you know, after years. It's not like your first year or two, you know, well, your first year, you're not going to really have to deal with swarming anyways, if you manage things properly. But it's typically the second season. I always tell new beekeepers, I'm like, this is your first season because this is where the fun occurs, you know, and you're going to have to manage swarms and things like that. But I've learned after time, it's just that timing. And that's kind of my method. Now, I'm thinking it won't be this year. It'll probably be next year. I'm thinking on something that, you know, it's kind of like a hot topic now, and I've never done it. And who knows if I will do it. But I'm thinking on doing that their method that stops them from swarming. We'll see. Who knows? But that's in the future. But that's once I get my numbers where I want them at. I won't want to grow, because when I get to a certain point, you know, when I get to around 20 or so colonies, I'm not going to, you know, want to grow past that. Because let's say I get to 20 and then I want to split my colonies. Well, 20 would turn into 40 or more. I don't want to do that. So moving forward, once I hit my number, I'm probably going to have to invest more time just to manage them so that I just maintain my yard.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, if you figure, though, there will be a trade-off. And what I'm talking about is that demeray or demery, whichever you want to call it. But yeah, there's swarm management, adding boxes. There's just, no matter what way you look at it, you have to invest time into your yard. So it's just, well, what tasks do I want to do this time when I go out there? So, but yeah, up to now, and you know, like, I mean, when I had 21 colonies, what was it, 2 years ago? I think I only lost 2 swarms doing the method that I do. So, I mean, it's not bad, you know.
Yeah.
It does work. I mean, if you remove that queen and you move her, you give her a reset, and she's like, "Oh, look at this! I got a new home. Huh? I must have blinked. I swarmed." You know, it just gives them a reset, and that parent colony, well, the queen's gone, so, you know, it just kind of works for me. So,
Bruce, that's great, Brian. There, you found something that works within your scale. At some point, you will hit a brick wall, and you've got I don't want to grow anymore, and the bees still need split, or they hit the trees, and that's
yeah,
where some folks just let her rip, tater chip. They let them swarm, and they're happy with whatever's left behind. But if you're looking at it from a production standpoint, it gets into this thing where either we got to split it. No matter what you do, you can't. There's only so much trickery that you can place on these bees before they need thinned out. That doesn't matter what you do. At some point, they will need thinned out. And then what is your strategy? What is your plan to do that? I want to thank Barker's Bees and Honey. He's going to get his question right here to the front of the line here. Best honey bottling tank. Any tips or advice on one? Thanks, you guys. Thanks for all that you guys do. Let's answer this question before we move on. But Barker's Bees and Honey, I want to thank you for your question and for your support there. Bruce, do you have any recommendations on a bottling tank?
Hey, can you put me on the big screen so you can see this? Let me show you.
Let's see. How do we big screen? Big screen.
Look right here. I'll show you.
You're the only screen. That'll work.
I'll show you. Hold on.
How do we do that? Oh, what are we doing here? There we go.
See that?
Look at that beauty. That's nice. We see it.
That's my recommendation because that's what I use.
Has that thing ever failed you?
It has not. I could it's a 16 gallon. They've got different sizes. Greg, I know you're a fan of Maxent and a distributor for them, but I've had this thing since probably 2018 or 2019. It's a double jacketed 16 gallon bottling tank, and I just fill it up and I bottle up, that's 180 pounds, so to speak, approximately 3 5-gallon buckets worth, give or take. And I love it. So that's my recommendation. And I think Bracken may be getting in touch with you, Greg, about that in the near future. Bracken's looking to make a purchase and investment, but like a lot of us, he's on a budget, and so I think he's just looking for some good advice. Are there any other recommendations that anybody might have out there for him that he could look into? I personally I think it was worth it. This is the first big investment I made was my Maxent extractor. I had 20 framer. Now I've outgrown that now, but that was a great piece of equipment. And then shortly after that, I bought this tank, and it's been just I've bottled thousands of bottles of honey out of this thing, and I plan to bottle thousands more. And so if I had a setup, I'm just limited in space. If I had a dedicated bottling room, I might get a bigger one and just keep more honey in it. But because when you got to order for a couple hundred bottles of honey, I've got to fill it up 2 or 3 times to be able to do that. I have one place that buys them by the pint. They buy like 200 or 300 from me at a time. So I've got to fill it up, fill all the bottles up, fill it up again, to get that done. So it's a little bit of a pain, but it works out okay. So that's what I say. Barker.
And that thing is, you can literally bottle you can bottle those. Yeah, the timing on those dripless valves, especially from Maxent, you can bottle faster than the any of the Chinese autofills. You can bottle faster in them. Significantly faster.
Yeah, I've got it right now. It's at about, it's like 88, 90 degrees. So it wouldn't bottle as fast. But if you warm it up to like 100 degrees, it'll just bottle. Literally, it'd take like 6 or 7 seconds to fill a 1 pound bottle, maybe less to fill a 1 pound bottle, 2 pound bottles, a little bit more than that. But it is very fast. Now, the one thing they say, it has the dripless valve, which is also, I think, critical. It's not truly dripless. It's close to dripless, but it's just so fast. And it'll drip every once in a while a little bit. If you just take the bottle and kind of run it along the valve, when you drip it, it does that. But if you don't do that, then there will be a little drip sometimes. But man, it's just I think that the automated ones are good if you want to get those. But I've used this thing, and like I say, we can get it done in a hurry. I bottled a lot of honey.
I would save the money and invest that into a quality piece of equipment. Folks, you've heard me talk about it before, but the great thing about Maxent is they've been truly 100% made in the USA since 1970. I'm talking about American labor feeding American families, American industry with American steel. You're not going to find that. That's a very rare thing to find. Unfortunately, the only thing made in USA on some of the products out there is the sticker that has a flag that's put on the front of those things. If you want something to last the test of time, you want to consider something that from folks who has been doing it for many, many, many decades. What's great about these Maxents is they've got a lifetime warranty on the steel, on that fabrication. That's a big deal. Bruce is going to show us how fast.
I'm gonna try. Let me find a bottle. Hold on.
That thing will actually go. Guys, I've got to visit Maxent's factory and watch them actually turn Kentucky 304 stainless flat stock into those bottling tanks and uncapping tanks. It's there's a difference. It is not all 304 stainless is not the same. Bruce, when you're ready, give us a little taste of what that thing can do.
Okay, now I've got, it's a mess in the background, so don't pay attention to that. I'm kind of kicked out of my normal studio, so but I'm gonna do this. The temperature, like I said, is about 90 degrees, so it won't be quite as fast. I normally bottle up a little bit warmer than that, but let's just see how long it takes. Brian, you got your stopwatch? You ready?
Give me 1 second. We'll time you. Hold on here, Brian or Bruce. Let's see. Gotta find, where is the clock?
Are we good?
Yeah.
Here we go. Ready? Mark, set, go. Once again, it's about 90 degrees. How long that take?
Under 8 seconds.
I had 7.1 seconds.
Let's do one more. Ready? Mark, set, go. That's it.
6.1 seconds.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty quick.
Wow.
2 pound obviously takes a little bit longer because it's a bigger bottle, but it works out really good.
You can move quick on those things. Here's one thing I say. We had Mr. Ray Deese was in the shop last night to pick up some virgin queens, and so he kind of got to see what we were getting into. But I've got a, let's just leave the name out, Chinaco style extractor that from the very beginning has been burning the honey on the bottom. Not all these things.
You mean bottling tank?
It's a bottling tank, and it's been burning the honey from the very beginning, and I never knew what was going on. At closer look, where the actual heating element is I mean literally like right underneath of the bottom pan, and so even though it's water jacketed, it is scorching the bottom of that honey, and so we are getting all of the Chinese stuff is out of here. It's definitely a huge investment. Bruce?
He just fell off his chair.
Well, I had a fall there.
Bruce, are you okay?
Hold
on. Bruce. Brian, you don't laugh. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be
I'm in this little tiny chair that my daughter used to have at her desk because my studio chair is up in my studio. This old pink thing that we gave her when she was like a little girl. And obviously it's not meant for a 220-pound guy to.
You did that very gracefully, though, almost as though you're like a PT specialist. You just knew how to fall.
Exactly.
Did the tuck and roll.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I had a plan. I knew exactly what I was doing. Oh my gosh.
He just disappeared out of view, and I'm just sitting here like, did he just
I'm trying to be all fancy here and like put my labels on my bottles and put the lids on while I'm talking because that's what I do. So anyway,
nice.
Here's a label. Whoop. So we are ready to go with that one.
It
really is quick. I do like this bottling tank, and once again, I'm careful not to be real critical of other people's products, but because I've got some other people's products, but I have been very pleased with my Max and stuff that I've had. The extractor, we just outgrew it, and the bottling tank I still utilize like probably on a daily basis almost. I bottle it up. It's on demand. I don't bottle up a whole bunch at a time. Like to just have sitting here. Like I never bottle my honey. Like when we harvest, I don't bottle up, hundreds of bottles of honey. I keep, a few bottles bottled up here for my honor box or for friends or family or people that need it, just a few at a time. And then I basically, when people order honey from me for stores and different things, I'll just bottle up however many bottles they need. And it's kind of demand, and it works out really well. It's just sitting here as honey on demand. So honey on tap, so to speak, is what I would call it.
I'll show you guys this, and then we'll move on back to where we were going. I don't know if I can pull up. Let's see. Share screen. Window.
Bruce, did you ever think about getting a warming cabinet? That way you can have
I've thought about it, but I think it's a great idea. I keep my honey in 5-gallon buckets, and I use a heating blanket,
Mhm.
and I just warm it up, and then it gets partially decrystallized, and I put it in this Maxon tank,
Yeah.
and then I just keep it. It's so easy just to bottle it quickly. It's just
Yeah.
almost as quick as trying to get it bottled up and put it in a warming blanket and a warming tank. If I had a more efficient size space, I would probably do that, but I just don't have anywhere
Yeah.
to do anything like that. Someday, maybe someday, that's my dream, to have a get a
Seems
Yeah.
like
good
no
place.
matter what you do, there's never enough. You never build the thing big enough, and there's never enough time or money to do it the way that you really sometimes can't even foresee doing that. Guys, let me show you this here. This is a
That's
new
pretty.
product from Maxent. They've built every component of this for literally decades. But you talk about one of the finest honey creamers that are on the market. Take a look at this thing.
Is that a bottling tank?
That's a honey creamer that we've got going here in the shop right now, and it just does an amazing job. It's just such a well-built piece of equipment. It's so extremely heavy. I mean, it is just
Yeah.
it is literally built like a tank, which is really cool. So what I'm trying to do is look at what can we do to invest in our operation that these things will be the kids' problems down the road. We don't have time for a hitch and the giddy up, and we don't have time to try to source weird parts or continual product model changes because the sea container is different. I want something that I know the people behind it. I want the everything, the stainless, the labor, the business, all of that. I want to be made in the USA. That is really important to me. And so, how cool is this honey creamer? So that should be done. See, Monday, Tuesday. See, today's Wednesday. We started that yesterday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Probably for the Learning Yard folks, you might get to see it in its nearly final stage before we put it in containers and then chill it.
That machine there, I tell you, once I get things kind of situated, I mean, that machine is a size that, I mean, I could one day just see it sitting kind of right over there.
Yep.
It's the size of it is perfect. I mean, it's not like, I think for the market of what I do, that's perfect size. I could do small batches. How is that like a 4-day process for that? I know you have to make sure you don't have any crystals in your honey and that you heat
Yeah.
it up. And then for the
The thing
seed, once
the
you
thing
put
with
the seed in,
the cream honey is you will find, like, let's see who's on here tonight. Let's see. Let me scroll through here. I
Brian
wonder.
Zavada is
Yeah, Brian Zavada has done a lot of creamed honey, and he does a phenomenal job. He's got a beautiful creamed honey. Everyone does it a little bit different, but there are some folks that are straight up dice method. There are some folks that are hybrids in between. There are some folks who actually never even let it rest. They turn it on and they leave it on for 7 to 9 days. There are some folks it's on for 15, off for 45 for one day. Some folks it's on for 15, it's off for 45 minutes
so it
for 4
varies.
days. It all varies. The seed starters vary on how much elbow grease you want to put into mashing down the crystals in the mortise and pestle. Some folks can buy seed honey and use that to start with, but there are so many different ways to go about doing it, and I think that's
Yeah.
one of the fun things about it is it's almost like the folks who are into artisanal bread or artisanal craft drinks of any sort. Like there's a certain personality and flair that you have with the product. Not to mention your value adding. You're taking a 12-pound product and now turning it into 16, 18, sometimes $20 a pound, maybe even more. So it's a great way to utilize a product.
Could you I know, and I know this could turn into an hour long thing talking about this, but the short and sweet answer of it is, say somebody brand new was going to get a creamer, they pick up that Maxent creamer and they get their honey all set and ready for a seed. Could you just purchase another individual's creamed honey
Sure.
Do you have to then mash it in a mortar and pestle, or can you just take it and just drop that seed in that honey?
You could do that. You could also take your crystallized honey and put the elbow grease into it and get it as fine as you
Yeah.
possibly would want. I mean, some folks literally they go to this extent of they will just mash the tar out of it in a mortar and pestle. They'll put
Oh,
it into try to put it into a food process. They'll do a bunch of different things to get it as fine as possible. Or maybe you can talk with someone like, I don't know if Brian Zavada would part with seed stock of his prized cream honey. But I think what you would do is I've tasted a lot of cream honey. Brian's got some really nice stuff. Um,
yeah.
Not all creamed honey is the same. Sometimes it has more of a gritty taste to it, and a gritty texture. And it's not that it makes it bad, but when it's done really well, it has this very smooth, almost laffy, not really laffy taffy, but imagine a
Butter.
nearly liquid butter. That's a very dense butter. It's just got it's soft, velvety on your tongue, and something magical happens with the honey. I think when it's entangled with air in that certain way, is it hits your tongue completely different, and the flavor profile with the same. You take your runny honey that you had, and you take your creamed honey. The two, it really exemplifies and accentuates some of the undertones in the honey that you normally your tongue doesn't get the opportunity, I think, to try to process. So it's not only is it fun and artisanal for the beekeeper in a flare, it's a different type of culinary experience, and it's a different kind of a use. Has some different uses too, which I think is kind of neat. So we'll be talking a lot more about that and showing you how any knucklehead, if I can make creamed honey, then I think you can too. Again, not to discount the true artisans out there, like Brian from Flower Street does a great job. It takes a lot of time, a lot of trial and error to dial things in the way that I'm sure that he has. But if you want to make some creamed honey, the right piece of equipment, I think, is really, really important. And so I'm excited to share this journey with this Maxent creamer. It is just it's a beautiful piece of equipment. But anyways, let's get back to wrapping up about splits and preventing these swarms from hitting the trees. Bruce, what is one or two go-to things that you feel like it is extremely necessary for you to do every single year to help prevent your bees from hitting the trees?
I think early splits, and I think average queen age to be younger. Lowering the average queen age in your colonies helps because I don't think the younger queens are as apt or likely to swarm as older queens. That's just kind of my opinion on it. So that's what I focus on. I do early splits. Some hives don't get split. Also managing space. Brian talked about that a little bit. I think that's part of the big thing I've been hearing a lot lately. If I have a big colony in my bee yard, I'll get comments about you need to do the DMRA or DMRA split and or DMRA method. And I'm like, for me with the number of colonies I have, I don't understand it that well. I don't really want to do that. But that the purpose of that I think is to free up space in the brood area for the queen to lay and to move brood up above, increase the population of bees. It'll decrease the swarming tendency and also allow you to make a lot of honey. I understand the principle behind it, but in my situation, it's just not something I want to do. But I do know that it works for a lot of people. But that's kind of the big catchphrase I've been hearing a lot the last year or two. There was a fellow that made a video on it a couple of years ago that just he drew it out, and I think that thing's got a ton of views, and I think a lot of people have seen that. A lot of people have been doing videos on it, and I think it's a great thing if you want to do that. But in my case, I just like to split early, and then manage space, make sure they have plenty of space, and then try and keep that queen age low. And by introducing new queens each year, I think if I start making some more of my own queens, it'll be easier to do that. So that's kind of my strategy. And I still do have some that swarm every year. Once I start stacking honey supers on, I don't go into the brood space that much. And so I'm sure that some probably grow up quicker and I'd like them to. Maybe some of those old queens go ahead and swarm or get superseded. I think over the years, I've ended up with a lot of young queens I didn't know I got because they just either swarmed or they superseded those queens that were getting older or that were failing. I can kind of tell, though, I've been trying to do a better job of marking my queens. And so, lots of times if I go into a colony and she's not marked, later on in the year, there's a pretty good chance that's a new queen from that year, either via swarm or supersedure. I don't get them all marked, but I try. If ever I see a queen, like early in the year before early in the year, like January, February, before I really get new queens in there and they get really established or they really start swarming, I'll mark them with the previous year's color. Like right now, though, if I go in colonies, I see unmarked queens, they're going to be blue because I don't know for sure if it's a last year queen or this year queen, but I know that at least it was a this year queen. So if I see a blue queen next year, I'll know she's at least a year old, and trying to kind of rotate through and keep them marked. And it isn't so much for being able to find the queens easier, although it does help. It's more just so I know how old that queen is, or at least what year I marked her. And that's kind of, Cayman and I talked about this, I think, years ago. We talked about this, and other people we talked about just getting that average queen age down, getting it lower can really help, I think, with colony health, and it can also help prevent swarming, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's. I think I think we're all speaking the same language. We may go about it a little bit different. The first thing that I start with is solstice queens, if at all possible. That works with my timeline on trying to pull honey, then go into treatment mode, and then it goes to split down, later season splits, downsizing splits. And then if I have any adverse outcome with any of the treatments, I'm already in that mode of splitting and requeening. So everything just kind of falls in line and leads to requeening as one of the last things that I do in the year. And then at that point, the colony they build the rest of the season. That's not for everybody. That can be challenging in different parts of the country, but for our management, that has actually worked out really well. It more so came because we were fulfilling all of the nuke orders and shipping queens all across the country, fulfilling all the queen orders for folks who wanted our genetics. And then it came so late in the year that it was just now time for us to do us and get us squared away. As a result, what that ends up is exactly what Brian shared early on in tonight's talk, is that those Pepto Pinks, they just want to hang on a little longer. They want to just, they stay put a lot longer during the spring. They're not ready to bolt on the onset of a flow. You might get into the flow and get to the tail end if you haven't been in your colonies, and then kind of go. But so those younger queens, those solstice queens, for me has just absolutely been huge. That's the first thing. The second thing that I do, which is, I'm actually in the danger zone right now. We've been so busy with a lot of other things here that I've not gone through all of my colonies in the last 14 days. Right now, I've got a yard of 48 they're absolutely just howling for me to get into. And then I've got another 148 or 160 some here at the home yard to move out to the rest of the out yards that I haven't gone all through, and I'm coming up on 14 days for both. And that is a major problem because we're going from like 70s today to like mid 80s tomorrow and the next day. If I am going to see swarms, knock on wood, swarms will be hitting the trees this week for me from my own bees if I don't get in there. They've been hanging on for so long, but they can only go so. The last 14 days, here's the timeline. You go in there, you work your bees, you give them some room, everything's fine. There's no cells or any cells that you can see. And then a flow kicks in, and the bees start building, they start brooding, and they start running out of room. They start going into that swarm mindset. That could have happened the moment you got out of the hive the last time, or it could be at any point in time between now and then, or it could be not existent at all. Maybe there's colonies who aren't even thinking about swarming right now. And that's what I'm praying for. Lord, just they don't want to swarm. That's what I'm really hoping for. But now I'm going to get in there, and now I've got to go through, because it's been 14 days on a lot of these. Now I got to go through, see where the brood nest is. Are they bound up with honey or pollen? Do they have room to move? It's a challenge right now because the blackberries just started to bloom, and it is my favorite flow of the year is blackberry. And now we've got a foreseeable future of no rain at all coming off of all this rain that we just had. These the blackberries should absolutely just go bonkers. the multiflora rose kicks in, and then that should usher in a beautiful black locust crop this year, followed by the Island of Misfit Toys crop, like black cherry, which I don't actually ever want to see mixed in with all the good stuff, and then tulip poplar. So we've got this foreseeable 10-day period, 12, 14-day period of flows that are going to be catching and kicking in. So if I can get them squared away right now, if I can get through, tomorrow and the next morning, if I can get through those 200, make sure everybody's good. You talk about a phenomenal opportunity for honey if I want to go that route, or to add another box on top is the next thing that I do. If I'm going in my colonies right now and they're just flirting with cells, maybe they've got some very young cells that are charged, I'll knock all those down. But now what I'll do is I'll move brood up. I will move brood up into that top box, create the chimney effect. If I'm only in a single, I'll move them up, keep that top box a chimney of brood. I will checkerboard some fresh frames in where I can, and I will pull honey up as high as I can in that configuration, only leaving honey and pollen on the outside of my bottom box so she can just keep slabbing it away in the center with brood, coerce them to put honey up. Right now, everything is in doubles. So now I've got some choices to make. What am I doing here? Right? I'm certainly not really interested in putting triple deeps on. So the name of the game becomes go ahead and start getting prepped for finishing up and getting all the nukes going, the nukes grown, pull everything out that we need for nukes, and anything else that I would want to super. Now is the prime time to go through there, knock all the queen cells down, and then super them heavy, knowing that this big flow is just right around the corner. Those are probably the biggest things that I try to do. Young queens, make sure we get in there every 14 days and moving the brood around, keeping those cells down, keeping room out ahead of them. And then my favorite thing to do with them, and this is kind of the first year, guys, that I catch myself saying something I would have never heard myself say before in the past, is I don't need any more bees. Like I'm right now, a carrying capacity between 250 and 400 colonies. That's as much as I want to fool with right now. And so if I've got 250 colonies that need split, what that really means, that turns into 750 immediately, because to thin them down where I don't have to worry about colony swarming, I'm pulling at least a nuke out of there, out of every single one of those. And that's great financially for a nuke sale. But think about this. If you're just splitting for yourself, like, do the quick math wherever you are buying your supplies at. Do the quick math on a box and frames and a potential bottom and top for every single split, and then times that by add another box on there to get to the. It gets to be very expensive. So every move you make ends up costing you a lot of money. So for some folks, the moves might be $100 or a couple $100. There are some out there where it's tens of thousands of dollars to add a box to everything. And there are some out there where it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to add a box. So there are so many factors that go into play. As Brian is talking about, I don't want to grow. I'm going to keep them at this rate. How do I keep the bees out of the trees? You guys, it's the same thing no matter what scale you're at some point. Either you have to find a home for the bees via nukes, or you have to figure out, what are you doing with all these extra bees?
Mm-hmm.
The joy of having healthy, beautiful, productive bees to work with is you've got something to work with. So those are a couple of the things that I come to my mind that I do. In years past, it was just, if they've got a queen cell, throw them in a nuke box. I probably still will do that. There's a certain, I guess, itch that I've got that I'm trying to stop, but I still will do that. If I get in there and I find a beautiful cap cell and I can see that rascal's hatching out tomorrow, you better bet your bacon that I'm taking it out of the box. I'm going to go over. We build these 6-way pallets for nukes. I will 100% fill up as many of those as I can. I'll block off the entrance for 24 hours, or I'll go move them to another yard. I can't help it. I want to see my equipment filled. It's a beautiful investment for the future, but it gets expensive. So you got to be able to cash flow all those moves. So those are some things, guys, that I think about. A couple comments here, and then we'll keep moving here. This is a great thing to consider. I know we already briefly talked about it, but Tom and Melissa via Honeybees, they say, in my operation, it is easier for me to make a split and grow my own genetics than to chase a swarm that may not be worth the effort. Free bees are not necessarily good bees. And I think that is the essence of exactly what we're talking about here. I think, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but the consensus here would be put the time into managing our own bees so that they're not hitting the trees. Put that time and effort and resource into that rather than trying to catch your investment out of the trees. So that's a great comment here. And then Honeyacre Farms. Is it better to make a split in July during the dearth but abundant drones, or September during flow but less drones? Man, I think it really depends on your neck of the woods. If that is who I think it is, I think that's Ryan Taylor down there in Tennessee. And Tennessee is kind of like this glory land of beekeeping sometimes, because it's this weird buffer in between all the things. I would say if you're making splits in later in the year to take advantage of older queens, make the split 2 times bigger than what you think that you need. If you can pull off a full 10 frame single split, and they've got resources and they've got young hatching brood, to me, I like those. I call it a downsizing split, where I don't want 3 deeps going into the wintertime. So I'm pulling stuff back, getting it to the size that I need. I like doing that. But you got to be mindful of your drones too, and how late that you see drones. That's a great point of consideration. I've got to give a shout out to Mr. Sam Mixon. Sam called the other day at the shop, and he's getting one of his eyes worked on there, and got a new eyeball put in there, and now he can see 2020 or whatever that it might be. And so now he's back home checking out the stream. So glad to see you back in action, Sam. Guys, I must have talked too much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you
I
went
can hear you.
there.
We went dark.
There's no picture.
Right. Guys, we're going on 2 hours. I think this is a topic that we can absolutely never get to the bottom of. We do got to say this, though. If Tom wants it, we've got to have it. Learning Yard Party, sponsored by Brian at Castle Hives. Let's put together a Learning Yard shindig here at Nature's Image Farm for this summer. I would love it to be in June sometime. Would be fun, where things are just really popping nice here in the home yard. Be a lot of fun. So let's make something like that happen. Guys, before we sign off, let's go around the horn. Let's get caught up on all things Stream Team. Brian, what's new for you for the next week?
Before I get to that, everybody type in #honey if you want to win a jar. And there we lost Greg. We're going to manage stuff here. Type in #honey if you want to win that jar of honey that Bruce literally just bottled. So you will have his sweat. When he fell off the chair, there could be hair particles in that jar. We don't know, but you will get that jar of honey.
I don't have a lot of hair for hair particles to be in there, so that
must be nice. Well, this guy's bragging up here, Bruce. All this extra hair to fall and stuff.
Yeah.
Nose hair we've got, maybe.
Well, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Ear hair, whatever it is.
I'll tell you what, I'll give away both of the ones I bottled up, so we'll do it twice. We'll do 2 spins.
That's some American honey right there, bottled from a truly American-made bottling tank.
Look at that.
Can't get any better than that. And Bruce's honey it's so good. If you've not had that Southern honey, it's just got a different thing to it. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Label's a little crooked because I was trying to do it while I was talking on here, and maybe that's when I was trying to when I fell off the chair. I don't know, but anyway, that's okay. It's custom.
If you get the jar that has the crooked label, Bruce was putting your label on mid-air as he was falling. So he apologizes for that. Won't happen again. But Now up
Let's
here,
spin. Yeah, go ahead.
while everybody's doing their old custom label application, hashtag honeys there. Up here, you know, I tell you, I think I'm just going to make an executive decision, and you know, I can eyeball my colonies, the new ones, and say, okay, I want to wait until they've got 8 frames that they're working. You know, I could try and eyeball it, but I think here in the next few days, I'm just going to make the decision and just throw a medium on. They're building out, I mean, so nice that I don't want to, you know, weather-wise and things like that, because we've got scattered storms and things coming, so I won't always be able to get over there. So I'll just get the space on them, give them the room, and they'll have no problem growing. I probably am going to end up splitting my one other colony. I'm thinking Friday or Saturday that's going to take place, whichever day I get over there. So Monday I went, and like I said, there were a couple little startings where they were like cups that they had just charged, and I smashed those jokers down. Queen was still in there, so I just smashed them down, and I thought, okay, guys, here, I'm giving you a couple days. And the plan was from Monday. Now, when I go over Friday, Saturday-ish, that gives them those couple days where I should see the signs that I'm looking for, and I'll just pull a split then. So, and then it's just, you know, I'll probably check that other one. If that Caucasian does not show any signs of swarming, then kudos, and that'll probably be my main honey production hive for the year. So, but it'll just be space. You know, I do need to get over, and I'd already told Tara tomorrow I'm going to go over and just prep boxes and things like that. So that way, when I do make the decision to go over and add, it's just I've got things stacked up, you know. But yeah, that's going to be it. I mean, it's exciting though. I mean, I'll be if I end up splitting both colonies, then I'll be up to 18. And I think for this year, honest, I think 18 sounds like a good number. I think 3 to 18 in a matter of what, a month, I think that'll be good, you know. And if I can end up August, September-ish, and I have 18 solid monster colonies, I can't complain. So, but yeah, that's going to be my next week here. So, let me do you want me to pull up that
Yeah, let's spin one, and then I'll do my little spill, and then we'll spin another one. But someone said autograph, so I went ahead and I did an autograph on it. But Bruce, Jenny, hashtag Bruce's Bees, hashtag Be the Lighthouse, hashtag Stream Team. So
here we go.
Be kind of cool.
First one, here we go. What if I win it?
Well, that'll be up to you if you want to do it or not.
Spencer Cox. Come on down.
Spencer. All right, Spencer, send me an email to bruce@brucesbees.com. We'll get it out to you with your information, where to send it to. We doing the other one now?
Oh, we're back to back.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Back to back.
Mr. Mark Miller.
Come on,
you're the lucky
down.
winner on the Price is Right.
All right, Spencer and Mark, send me an email, bruce@brucesbees.com, and I'll get them out to you with your address, your information to get it to you. All right. Well, down here in Alabama, we're going to harvest honey this weekend. We're going to do our spring harvest. I anticipate probably, that's a good point there. All max water jacketed tanks are initialed and dated by the welder on the feet, so you can know exactly who made your tank and when. That's cool.
Really?
But we're going to harvest honey down here. We're going to do probably, for me, 60 to 65 supers worth this weekend. I got a crew lined up to help out. I got a new kind of a mentee that's going to help me out, I think, pulling on Friday. Brian Lee was talking about, I'm not sure if he's going to make it or not, but then we have a crew lined up for Saturday. But we're going to get our first spring harvest off the hives, get the boxes back on. and hopefully they'll fill them up with the tallow honey. For those who might be interested in what tallow is, what it looks like, I've never really seen anyone do this. I'm sure somebody probably has, but I did a video, my most recent video. I just went out. We were out there this past weekend, kind of between rainstorms, like right before it rained, the thunder's in the background. But at my Slocum bee yard, is all kinds of tallow trees around there, and that's that's probably our biggest crop every year. And they weren't quite ready. I don't think they are quite yet, but they're very, very close to being ready. But I kind of showed some tallow in different stages of development, kind of what it looks like, and try to explain a little bit about it. So you hear people in the South talking about tallow, Chinese tallow, or in the South, a lot of people here call them popcorn trees. You'll know what we're talking about, kind of what it looks like, and the bees just love it. And so I'm trying to get the spring honey off, get it stored, and then slap the honey supers back on so the bees can fill everything up, hopefully, before our harvest, which is probably going to be towards the end of June. So that's what we're doing this coming weekend. I'm also going to try to, I don't think I'm going to do a video on this just because that's a time thing for me. And I just want to see if I can do it first and be successful at it. But I'm going to try to graft tomorrow evening. I went out to Appleton Farms today, actually this past weekend, right before we went to Slocum, and I got the video of the tallow. My son-in-law, Rylan, who's helping me out with the bees some, he's trying to learn. They just moved down here. We went down and we found a colony I think will work really good for a cloakboard system. And I got the brood and everything kind of arranged. We put the cloakboard in there without the slider in. And then today I went down there and put the slider in. So tomorrow I'm going to try to graft from a colony that I've identified that I think will be pretty good, just right there in the same bee yard. And we'll see if we have some queen cells or if I'm an utter failure at it like I was. Last spring, I had a real good success. I did really well. And then I tried it another time late in the summer, which was horrible conditions, and I failed. And then this spring I grafted, but I happened to have a queen in my starter section of my board. So obviously you got a queen in there. They're not going to make queen cells. So that didn't work out very well either. That was definitely not a pro tip, but that is a pro tip. Don't have a queen in your starter colony. So this time I know the queen's down below. I haven't added any more bees or anything. I think there's plenty in the box, and so we'll see how that goes. But I may shoot a picture, a really short video, but I'm not going to do the whole process. I just don't have time to video everything on that. But I'll probably try to catch a little video of our harvest this weekend. Just maybe show you a little something what we're doing and how much we get. But I'm anticipating 60 to 65 supers, which should translate to 35 buckets of honey. We'll see how it goes. We have been in somewhat of a mid-season dearth. When the spring flows over, we have a little dry. It kind of dries up for a little while, and the bees start to consume some of their honey when that happens. And so we may not have quite as much as I thought, but hopefully we will. I moved all the honey, capped honey, to the top of the hives, and so hopefully we'll be okay and have a fun weekend. But anyway, that's what we're doing down here in Alabama, and the bees are overall looking pretty good. Oh, I've got a couple of bee yards that aren't as strong as I'd like. The one in Midland City we talked about earlier, where I'm taking my swarms, that bee yard just kind of has fizzled out a little bit. We do have a couple of colonies out there that are pretty good, or a few. The Newton cell tower bee yard is okay, but not great. And then the ones at the farm are okay, but not great. And so really those southern bee yards between Apple and Slocum are where my crop's going to be made this year mostly. And that's kind of what we're just going to see what we end up with. When that tallow flow kicks in, everything just gets better. Typically, hopefully we'll have the same experience this year.
Nice. Well, sounds like you got not the light at the end of the tunnel, but you're much further down the road than we are in Ohio. So that's you've got it figured out. It sounds like there, but that's cool. Well, guys, here. And by the way, Bruce and Brian both have been putting out some great videos lately too. So if you haven't already, make sure you jump over to Bruce's Bees and Castle Hives. Check out their videos. A lot of fun stuff kind of going on with those there too. A couple shout outs this week. I've not seen them yet. Michael at 21st Bee. I guess he's got a great video out showing off some Endura Hive wax dipped equipment. And then Mr. Tony West has a video out. Tony came up and picked up some packaged bees. It was great to see Tony West. Matter of fact, Tony's kind of, as far as I know, is probably an expert in the demery method. If I knew an expert in that, and so maybe we'll have him here at the Learning Yard to kind of hands-on demonstrate that. He's got a great presentation. but I think seeing the boxes in person and manipulating them and getting a better understanding, I think would be something. Not that folks would like, it would probably be too late for them to do much with that this year, but to plant that seed for next year. Hey, here is an option if you don't want to go any further with splits and numbers and things like that. So anyways, just shout out to those guys. They're awesome. I'll show you one of the things that we've kind of been into a lot lately, and it's just making a bunch of queens. So of course I got to shout all the guys on Bruce. I need a Bruce's Bee stickers for the side of the incubator, but I've got we've got Castle Hives, we've got Bohemia, we've got Enduro Hive, we've got Apis Engineering, we've got Maxent, and we've got the one and only Creamed Honey King himself, Brian Zavada, Flower Street Farms stickers there representing there on the side. But here's one of the first looks at there's a virgin. She was only, let's see, when I took that photo, she was probably 6 hours old or so. They start to get their color fairly quickly, but at first, you know, they're very, very plain. Really can't see a whole lot kind of going on, but we really have some really dark beauties hatching out this year. So, or emerging out, if you're like a language police, and they're emerging out of their cell, not hatching out like a chicken egg. I get it. I get it.
Hey,
But yeah.
I just remembered here, Greg. Hate to interrupt, but everybody, we have to show the updated stream team photo.
Oh, do you have that or do I? Okay, here I got it. Here, I'll put it on the screen. Okay, can you put it on the screen? I'll put it on the screen. Let's see.
On the screen. It's the updated.
I mean, here's the thing. Like,
it might be AI generated. I don't know.
It probably is. Well, give me 1 second, folks. You've got to see this.
Yeah.
Bruce is like, what in the world are these?
I haven't seen it, so there's no telling what I look like.
What are these goofs doing? All right, so
is it gonna be like one of those Donald Trump things where he's walking around?
Definitely. There's so much Donald involved in this thing that if you are politically sensitive,
heaven help me.
You might want to just really watch this. Okay, let's see. We're gonna bring it over here. Let's see.
The greatest Donald you'll ever see.
This is the greatest Donald, the likes of which have never been seen. Okay, let's see.
No other Donalds
pull this one down. We'll pop this one up here. Okay, share screen. Boom.
Yeah.
Steve says,
now are you guys ready for this?
I don't know.
Hashtag trigger warning. Hashtag Donald. If Donald triggers you, guys, I want you to focus on me right now. If just the word Donald triggers you, then I want you so badly to be triggered by this photo. I mean, so badly triggered by this photo. Like, this is what it's all about. So here we are. Bruce is in Alabama. Brian and I were in the shop, and we look around, right? We look back on the big screen, and the stream team's playing. And it's just, all we could hear is this little tiny violin playing in the distance somewhere. And it's like, this just doesn't seem right to have all this fun without Bruce. So Bruce,
oh no,
we did have a stand-in for you. The Donald himself was here.
Donald was here. It's the best Donald.
It's the best Donald ever. It's the best Donald ever.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Donald was there and was present. This is the new stream team.
Bruce, you look great.
I look different.
And I'll have you know, we're having a great time. You know, Brucette she's just enjoying her best life as a stand-in for the stream team. I no sooner get her out. I'm going out towards the front door. Brian, what does she do to me?
She keeps playing her leg.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she just let her rip
right on his
right
boot.
down my leg, right on the toe of my boot. It was just
wonderful.
It was great. It was great.
It was the best leak you'd ever see.
That's what we're up to.
The winners of the honey. Who was it? It was Spencer and was it Mark or it was
Mark Miller?
Yeah, Mark
Miller. You guys be sure and email me at bruce@brucesbees.com, and I'll get that out to you. I haven't received them yet, man. I've had a chance yet. So
folks didn't recognize you in that photo, Bruce, because you weren't wearing the duck wasn't wearing the red cap. That's great. Oh, Russell Koopman. That's a shot
Is that
across the bow there.
hair or feathers?
Bruce,
I
yeah,
had
finally.
feathers.
So, well, that's what we're busy doing here is just we're in the end of the thick of queen rearing. So a bunch of grafting, the incubators getting a workout. It's just it's one of my absolute favorite things to do. I keep finding myself nearly almost in this phase where I've got way too many virgins to do anything with, and so we can only we're got some set aside, of course, to inseminate, but yeah, so there's gobs of virgins, it seems here, which is fun to be able to see them, what they are, what they look like, what's all those things before they go out into a mating box. But that's pretty cool. Other than that, I just want to remind folks, Learning Yard folks, it's $5 or $6 a month. Become a member of the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel, and you can partake in all of the Learning Yard shenanigans. The shop talk, which is recorded right here in the shop. From there, we go right out to the field to the Learning Yard and apply all that information hands-on. If you want to be a part of that, if you want to check out those videos, whether you're a Learning Yard folks and you just want to replay and relive those moments, or if you couldn't make it to the Learning Yard, or if you are a part of our extended Learning Yard family abroad and you want to check in and see what we're up to, it's like $6 a month. We would certainly and love and appreciate your support. So consider that. We've talked a lot tonight about splits and swarms, but we can only scratch the surface of those things really when it comes down to it. But we hope that you guys found this information helpful, at least entertaining. But I kind of want to close, start to close this thing out, Brian, with this. Let me get this. You know, when we're talking about we're splitting our colonies and the apiaries, right? And we've got all this abundance that that God has blessed us with to do something with. And if we're not stewards of that resource, right? If we're not operating as that one talent beekeeper does nothing and they let that beautiful resource hit the trees. You know, that 2 talent beekeeper is sometimes getting in there and trying to stay ahead of it. That 5 talent beekeeper is the one that knows that God has given an enormous resource there. That if managed correctly, we can times 4, we can times 5, we can times 10 the asset, all in appreciation and thankfulness of what God has given us. That's really important. As we were talking about that, though, when you guys are kind of laying out, here's what we're doing with our splits, and we only want to grow so far. And what happens if we split too hard and we split too late? You know, what would it profit an apiary to split them to $10 too, and all of them get robbed out and none of them make it? It reminded me of this. Mark 8, verse 36. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Guys, that translates to a lot of things in life, specifically about our salvation and our soul. But just think about where you are in your bee yard for the sake of chasing numbers, for the sake of profiting numbers of hives in your yard. You split them until there's nothing left, or you split them so late in the year that they can't stand on their own, that they get robbed out. What kind of beekeeper are you then? Are you that 1 talent beekeeper, or are you that 5 talent beekeeper? It's something to consider and something to think about as we all journey on with this part of our year. No matter where you are in your beekeeping, you've got choices to make. You have abundance and a blessing right in front of you. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to be responsible with it? How are you going to turn that into maybe a blessing for somebody else? But how can you go from a 1 talent to a 5 talent beekeeper? I think that's going to become a theme for us the rest of this year, is how can we move from that 1 talent beekeeper to the 2 talent beekeeper to that 5 talent beekeeper. There's going to be a lot more talks about that as the stream team goes on. Fellas, who is the stream team on next week? Which channel? Back over to Brian. So next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Castle Hives YouTube channel. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. And until the next time, we want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.